allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we're having a special public hearing to discuss one case on the agenda. You can find the agendas near the door. Having said that, please be aware that if there is an emergency, please exit to your left. Do not take the elevator and please take the stairs. And at this point in time, we're going to actually adjourn. There's a traffic issue.
Yeah, and just to clarify the chairman's opening remarks, tonight actually is not a public hearing. It's a special meeting to consider an item that's still on the agenda that was tabled at the last meeting. So it won't be a public hearing, but it'll be a continuation of that case.
Thank you for that clarification. So with that, I'd like to adjourn for 10 minutes due to a traffic issue. Is that permissible? Yep. Thank you. please call the first case?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Case number PB 1801-4, upon the matter of request by I-Square LLC for preliminary final site plan approval and steep slope and watercourse environmental protection overlay district permits associated with the expansion of the I-Square development located on premises 775 and 795 Titus Avenue, 50, 51, 60, 61, 71, 81, 93 Lorraine Drive in a mixed-use commercial district.
Thank you. The applicant? Thank you.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for setting and scheduling this special meeting for us and continuing. I really appreciate that a lot. Since the last meeting, I think where we primarily left off was we had supplied some new documents at that point, some updated information at that point, and a lot of the board members hadn't had adequate time to review that. And so I was hoping that, following that review, you may have some further questions, and certainly available to answer them. And the only thing I wanted to address up front was that this afternoon we emailed over just a couple, and we debated this a little bit internally on our side, whether to, because we didn't want to do the same thing at 3 o'clock the day of the meeting and send you a whole bunch of new information, and we hemmed and hawed on it. We thought that it's best to get everything out there, but if I could just summarize the changes that were made on those documents from what you've reviewed since the last meeting, it's very, very minor changes. In fact, they came from some of the feedback that we heard. So if we start with the first page on there.
Excuse me, can we just refer to the maps as they're noted on here, either C3 or C2 or C6?
Correct, I can do
All right,
that. Yeah,
great,
so this
thank
is
you.
on, the first one I have on me, in front of me is C2. And on C2, there was only 3 very minor changes, and there were 3 crosswalks added between the brewery and the retail store and the parking lot area. So if you see the 3 hash marks crossing the line.
I'm sorry, Mike, excuse me, honey, I'm sorry. Are these the ones that we just got emailed? Did you bring copies, Leslie, or?
We did. We
Oh,
have, we
okay.
have hard
'Cause they
copies.
don't
If
have-
anybody would like to have them, we have them. We didn't want to, again, add a whole lot more documentation to fluff around with, but we do have them with us.
I think we need them only because we have the old ones.
Right,
All right.
thank you.
By the way, I never introduced myself. My name is Mike Nolan from I-Square at 400 Bakers Park. Keep everything official. So C2 and also C3, Leslie?
You want?
This- So on C2 that she handed you, in the upper right, if the way you would look at it, the new parking area proposed on the for Cruzy property, and now shows the 3 crosswalk areas outlined in black there. There'll be white lines on the pavement and with some hash marks on them, so that that everybody's aware that it is a pedestrian right away. And C3? Yep. And C3 is the same, but it is the exact same change was made to it, but C3 is the blow up of just the Vercruysse property instead of looking at the entire site. But again, the only same change was just the crosswalks.
Thank you. Thank you.
And again, that's the exact same change made to both of those. They just go hand in hand because one is a blown up version of the other. And CD4?
Your workout. Thank you.
And on CD4, we've added the fence at Creek Crossing, which is the lower center of the drawing. And there's still, this was still debated. We had talked about getting this to a 16-foot span, which we know we can do. The particular manufacturer that we've been working with their materials and specs did not call for that, but we spoke with Raymar Steel as recent as Saturday and confirmed that we can span 16 feet. The bottom rail will need to be about 6 inches tall, but that really doesn't affect anything because it just shortens the spindles. The overall fencing height and detail would be the same. Does that make sense to everybody? I just want to stop on that one because I know this has been asked a lot and just. And then on C5, C6, Leslie?
No.
Yep. And again, all of these changes were very minor and why we hesitated to send them, but we did want to be clear that we are following some of the feedback we had received at prior meetings, and most of this addresses those. So on C6, the only change is really on the Lorraine Drive parking lot now has a key for the garden, and again, added in the plant list and added in the legend there. So it's clearly shows where the plantings are going and what's going to be planted there. And other than that, they are the same drawings that we spoke of at the February regular meeting.
Mr. Nolan, any other clarifications?
No, at this point, I open up to questions that you may have had from the last review. There's no other changes to the plans since those drawings, so I guess if your questions weren't addressed in those items, then I would still need to address them.
Start with questions from the board. Mr. Evelyn, are you prepared for any questions? You can pass if you'd like and come back.
No, my question is, on the fence drawing actually that you just handed us, it shows a normal creek water level, and then it shows that the bottom of the spindles on the fence are going to be 1 foot 6 inches minimum above the normal creek water level. And when we had discussed this at the last meeting, we had agreed on 3 feet above the high water point.
I don't recall the 3 feet, but that certainly could be adjusted. It could really be anything at that point as far as amount of clearance, but I thought I had described a scenario where we were 12 inches above the highest grade close by, figuring that water it would go everywhere else at that point if it was 12 inches above the high of the, what I just thought I described at that point was the land on the side of the creek, adjacent, both sides of the creek, so there was clearly no way it could obstruct the flow.
Sure.
And I could have that wrong. I'm not.
That's okay. As could I. I'm not a huge fan of the fence over the creek, but I did see that it's mentioned in that part 3 seeker that we got from staff that it is going to be pending on DEC approval. So I would like to see it 3 feet above the high water line, if that's okay with you.
We can confirm that may already meet that, but I'll address the way it's written in the drawing as well.
Okay.
But certainly above the high water level, because I don't believe the high water level is as tall as the banks of the creek.
Right.
Therefore, I think I may 1 foot above the height on adjacent sides may be one and the same as 3 feet, but we can confirm
Okay. Thank you.
that we meet that, and that's
Thank you.
no problem. Can you keep notes, Leslie?
I am.
So, thank you. I don't want to promise something and forget.
And did did you, well, obviously, it might not be on the drawing, that the silt fence, we discussed that the silt fence was drawn into the creek, but obviously, can't do that.
Correct, and that'll, I believe that'll be addressed with our SWIP plan.
But that's
And,
right, that's where we were on that.
Correct.
Sorry, I'm trying to
No, that's fine.
get it back up to speed here. That's all I have for now, so,
Thank you.
yep, thanks.
Mr. Reed?
I just want to confirm, Mr. Nolan, there was, I think, another comment letter from LaBella that came through.
There was, I believe it was
Just want to make sure you received that.
dated
correct?
March.
I think it was mostly
Yes,
technical stuff.
dated March 6th. I have that in front of me
Okay.
here. And they actually brought up a couple of good points on the retaining wall. Then our engineer confirmed that that was likely a good idea. He had a little work to do with the design of that to make it match. But I believe we are, yes, everything would be compliant. The only thing we didn't get into this drawing is the stockpile location for the fill.
Okay. My only other thing, and I think I just want to bring it up more for the board here, and maybe as a talking point for the applicant, is I'm not in love with the traffic analysis that we've been discussing for this extended portion of this. And I see in the part 3 that was prepared, the narrative, there's a comment, I was trying to find it here and I can't find the exact spot now, I read it earlier, but there was a comment listed that the predominantly staffed parking lot that's proposed on Lorraine Drive, that perhaps the ingress and egress out of that could be controlled if need be by staffing measures through the I-Square Development Organization. I would very strongly like to bring up to the board that I think we should absolutely put that as a condition, that ingress and egress should be on Bakers and Stranahan rather than on Lorraine Drive, because I see that as an increase to traffic, and if we can mitigate that through the other more commercial roads, I think that would be a much better way to handle that. So I don't know if you have any issues with that.
No, it was our intention, as we originally proposed, was to keep those barricaded off the entries at Lorraine. We show the curb cut because in the future, it will make sense with connecting the properties, but while people still reside on Lorraine, we didn't want the ability to cut across to leave that way, especially if it was bar traffic or something that was later in the evening. So for that sake, for interruption's sake, we do plan on having that blocked off, and that is certainly could be a condition, would not bother us.
That would, just to the board, that would make me much happier with the ingress and egress out of that parking lot. I don't think I have anything else right this second, Mr. Chairman. I may, as I'm kind of collecting my thoughts here, have something else, but I think most of my stuff was more or less answered with the information.
Thanks, Spencer.
Mr. Chair, first of all, I want to say thank you for giving us a little more time to take a look at the plans. I think given us quite a bit more than what we originally started off with. What's the purpose of the fence across the stream?
Really to prevent cross-traffic that we occasionally get from the rear of the apartment complex that's existing on Hudson, Arundecoit Village Apartments. The woods connect that, where Aldi's is. The town, or the developer of Aldi's, built a road that connects or dead ends into the woods, that if you follow from that point, you end up walking the creek line, and there's kind of deer trail through there, but occasionally we have some teens and young people go back there and drink a couple beers. And,
Okay, so
we're trying to prevent
what's
that.
the sort of census then that's utilizing that?
The thought process in midsummer months, or at least when I first bought the property, July, August of 16, the creek bed was basically dry. And that was kind of the first time we had noticed people walking back through there, basically walking up the creek bed. So I thought if it blocks it, it's a visual barrier that would prevent that. It doesn't really, it's not very secure. You could 3 feet from you could certainly get under it, and we know that, but it's more of a visual, it's gonna keep most people without bad intention out.
All right, I mean, keep on going. It's not something I'm crazy about. There's 79 parking spots that I was able to count on the Verguzzi property.
Okay.
What are those going to support?
The parking on Vercruysse will, well, the ones immediately in front of the residential units will be specifically for the residents that
Right.
live there and not available for public parking. We have parking along the brewery side and in front of the brewery, or the north side of the brewery, that's intended to handle the traffic that's associated with that building, with their overflow being in the retail building rear parking lot across the way. The retail building will have the biggest demand for parking in that area at the square footage that's
But if the
listed.
current stuff that you're asking us to approve tonight, what is that, 79?
The ones on the Vercruysse property will support that retail building, the brewery, and then,
But currently, we have no use for all 79 parcels because all you're asking us to do is approve a brewery tonight.
right, it's allowing us
Okay.
to put in the infrastructure that goes in underneath that, and we'll feed that all the way to the apartments and to the brewery and to that retail building. We just haven't finished the planning on it, but it will go within a year or so, be constructed and
So
immediately need
there's
that
no
parking.
need for all 79 today. I understand it would be better for you,
There's a
but
couple of different thoughts on that, Alan. That is part of our pervious installation, which needs to be completed by June of this year, for the state participation in the funding of it.
Right.
So if it's not installed in that time frame, we would lose that fund, and then it would become an impervious parking lot, which would put us back kind of at square one on our whole stormwater and site planning. So it is essential at this point to install that.
what's happening with the Vercuysse retail property, building that is there right now? The one that they formerly used as the vegetable stand?
The fruit stand will be torn down. We have 4 structures left on the property, 2 greenhouses, and 1 residential structure in that greenhouse that are all going to be demolished over the next 60 days or so.
So it'll be the next 60 days. We don't have a timeline on putting another building on there, so what's going to be fronting Titus Avenue once that's removed?
It'll be a vacant parcel. It'll be prepped for construction.
What will the first thing I see when I'm driving down Titus?
A vacant space.
Okay, or a parking lot?
Yeah, you'll see the parking as well, because you'll see through where the building would be into that parking lot, yes.
Okay. I just want to shift a little bit over to Lorraine Drive. There's not going to be any curb cuts on the proposed parking over there going out to Lorraine?
There is. There's 2 curb cuts, 2 entry egress points that are in that parking lot that are curbed in and that will create the garden areas. They'll encompass it, just like we have along Baker's Park, along Grange Place, and along Stranahan Park. We have 2 side curbs that encompass a garden in between them to act as a screening for the cars and the view. That'll all be installed, but there'll be a breaker and entry point 24 feet wide on the north end and the south end of that park. Central, sorry, we corrected that. It's got 1 entry, central, 24 feet wide, correct?
And is the curb going to be in the right-of-way, or where's that curb going?
The curb is technically in the right-of-way. It's at the edge of the current roadside.
Okay.
But by town standards, that's within the right-of-way.
All right, I don't recall that being in the county's comments.
It's not, because Lorraine Drive is a town-owned road, and
Okay.
so it wouldn't be affected, would
All right.
not have a bearing on the county.
So to get a curb in there will require,
That Lorraine Drive is a town road, and so the applicant would need to come and make a application for a right-of-way permit through the DPW department,
all right.
Department of Public Works.
When will those curb cuts be opened?
When the curbing would be installed in the next 45 days, they would be, we plan to block the entry points until we acquire the remaining properties that are part of the development on Lorraine, until we vacate the
So
remaining.
they could be permanently closed, potentially.
They potentially could be, yes.
Okay,
It would be only fair to say it that way.
okay. I would like to see, and I don't know how you feel about it, but a sidewalk going on the east side of that parking lot. Their sidewalk already exists down to, I think, number 93 or something like that, then it stops. I'm not so sure that, you know, it's gonna obviously skip over a property that you currently don't control, but
We own we are purchasing 93. So that is, within ours, and everything from there down, to nearly the end of the road we do. It's not, the road currently doesn't have any, and we don't really see adding any pedestrian traffic entering that way because there's nothing to enter into.
it would actually fall within the master plan to add a sidewalk over there.
If there was a destination point at the end of that, yes, I'd agree with that, but
But we got people coming out of a parking lot, they can very well head north toward the brewery from there, right?
No, well, I would assume they'd walk up the, private road, the driveway of the
They
development.
just walk in the road?
Yeah, I would think so.
Saying they would come across here.
That's our planned traffic path, would be to go that way rather than go back out to Titus. The sidewalk along Titus in the CAMS block there, daycare CAMS block, is really in rough shape. We'd love to see that addressed at some point and possibly participate where it's fronted on our properties, but, it's not it is not a useful connection point for us in the way we have this designed.
All right. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that'll come for conversation later. The screening along the west, or the east, the north and the south and the east part of that parking lot, is there any chance that we can get heavier screening in there? Especially the part that is now facing the three properties that are not within your control. I believe those numbers are like 60, 70, and 80 or something like that. I think that we're gonna have cars coming in and out of there all hours of the day and night without any screening.
Well, there's screen.
Those people just, what I'm asking is that we look for heavier screening such as evergreen screening or something like that. I mean, those folks, last year were looking at a neighborhood across from them, and this year they're looking at a potential parking lot. And the plants that you've proposed to us are nice plants, but they're also not gonna offer that kind of heavy-duty screening that's gonna stop the traffic from interfering with their lives. And, you know, even if it's 10 cars a day that's using that, that's still gonna be 10 cars a day going in and out that those folks are now gonna have to deal with. And I don't know what the hours are gonna be that that parking lot's gonna be utilized, but if we can at all consider that, I would like to be able to do that. But again, that's something for, if you agree to it right now, we're all set.
I don't necessarily agree with that now. I think the screening that we've proposed, consistent with the remaining I-square, this condition already exists with the parking lot that is on, Lorraine Drive that supports the.
And once those other houses are gone, I'd say go ahead and do something different. But until those neighbors are still living there, I wouldn't appreciate somebody ripping down the houses across the street from me, putting in a parking lot, and then having their lights shine through my living room window. The landscaping plan, do we have anything for 50 and 51 Lorraine Drive? The stuff that we were given doesn't have anything, and those are totally fully in your control. And I'm mostly concerned about this stuff on the east side of Lorraine Drive as it's entering into what I'm gonna call the new development.
Which ones are 50 and 51?
They're across the street from one
East side of the
another.
street or
The
west?
two that are on the circle,
Yeah, they're on the circle,
On the west side or the east side?
both sides.
both sides.
C2 shows the existing parcel numbers, if that's helpful to the board.
Yeah, thank you.
West side of the circle.
Oh, north, I guess that's the north side.
Yeah, I just meant west side of.
So I don't, if you have something that you can just explain to us, that would be helpful.
Certainly. At the one on the east side of the circle, if you will, It would be the northeast side, the way the drawn with the darkest half moon in it.
Number 50.
Number 50, correct. That is leads into a steep slope. We recently demolished the house. We've refilled the basement, and the plantings restored would be off of the conservation list. It'll be grassy for the relatively flatter points, but as it gets to the stream, where we're going to put some ground growth there, but there really isn't a place to have like gardening in there. It's at the end of the road. It's in an odd spot, but it's appropriate as we plan to green it and stabilize the soil so that it doesn't erode the edge of the hill. So we want to get something that stabilizes the edge of that hill.
And then on number 60,
On number 60 across the road, hang on 60 the driveway goes through it.
we can go back to 51. I was going to just stay on the same side of the
Sorry,
street.
yes, now I follow you. There's existing tree there. We're adding a light post and a couple of light posts along there. We were going to leave it primarily green, as in grassed, and that it'll feels most appropriate with the other houses in the way that it flows. All the front yards are primarily green grass with trees, and therefore I feel it blends in the most rather than putting a fancy entry point, if you will. We were going to leave it relatively low key.
Is that in between 60 and 70? Is that a fence?
Between 60 and 70.
See right here.
I don't believe any of them are fenced east-west, Alan.
No, there's no,
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't believe that there was.
Yeah, I think it's just a property boundary.
I would encourage some landscaping there. I mean, that is turning into a driveway now that was once a house. I mean, I'm thinking of all this stuff as an old neighborhood, right? And now I'm changing it totally, but I still am leaving people living there. So it would be nice just to do some landscaping for them. I mean, a tree is great, but now you're going to add a light that they never had. Maybe they had a porch light next, but they didn't have a pole light next to them.
Yes, we'll talk. We have a good relationship with the neighbors there. We've been in talks with them for a long time.
Yeah, but I would like some.
We would certainly honor
Yeah.
anything that they want along there.
I would like to get a commitment that we put some landscaping. And 51, the same story, is that the same as 50, or what is the intention there? Because that's actually abutting the,
I'm gonna ask Diane to address a few of these comments.
That's-
Ellen, if you would. Diane is our basically construction manager. She
Yep.
oversaw the construction of the Imaginarium. More importantly, she was involved in the 1983 and 1988 development of the area plan for what ended up to be the I-Square area. So we really look internally as an authority on what is appropriate and what fits the vision of Supervisor Shantz and the other participants that spent a lot of money and put a lot of time into their planning back then. So with that, Diane Zachary.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure I know the street numbers, so,
That's all
so I'm
right.
catching up with you, Ellen, so,
if you look on C2,
yeah, yeah.
C2 actually has that.
Yeah, okay, so 60 is the one that the road was coming through, okay.
51 is the one now that we're currently, I'm looking for a commitment for 60.
Sure.
That we do some other landscaping over there. Number 50, we were just explaining that that's going to be a field sort of situation.
Sure,
That's going to be a maintenance
right,
lawn,
the creek bed, yep,
okay? And then number 51 across the street, that's going to be just south of that parking lot.
right. Where the house is still there, so we're showing, the 3 trees on the south edge of that parking lot. And you're looking at, 41 would be the one south of 51?
I'm asking
To
about
screen-
51.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, okay.
51,
Yeah,
I would imagine you're going to demolish the house and then we're going to do something,
Yeah.
or,
right?
The,
So,
dem-
yep,
the
mhm.
demolition of that is not planned at this point.
okay, so that's going to stay,
At this point, there's tenants in the house. The prior owner's renting it back from me for up to the next 6 months. So we don't have immediate plans to demolish that as part of this.
so is 51 no longer considered part of this plan tonight?
It is still part of the plan. It's adjacent property that, but it's not being developed, it's not being improved in this.
All right.
I don't think we touched
I-
that boundary, do we?
I mean, if there's nothing changing on it, I don't know why it's being considered tonight, but that's maybe a question for staff.
And I can address it too, Carrie. I think the reason, Alan, why it's being considered, and I think the questions that you're asking are relevant to why it's being considered. It's part of the larger development plan. While there might not be any immediate future plan for reuse of that property, I think it is appropriate to discuss that property and mitigation measures as you're asking about it. You know, Mr. Nolan indicated there might not be plans for 6 months, but there could be within the next year or two or in the future, and as part of your seeker analysis, you need to consider the entirety of the plan that's in front of you.
Great.
When it is demolished, the intention would be to recover it with grass and secure the soils and ground there as we have with the others.
Okay.
Do that.
I'm just going to touch briefly again on Spencer's point about the traffic study. I know we saw the results. I've not seen the raw data. Do we have that raw data somewhere?
Yeah. Didn't we submit the backup data to them?
Are you referring to the email from the engineer from T. Island, Nate, and his last name is escaping me? Yes.
Okay.
I want to see all your number on this, but I just.
I think we had originally submitted a cover page and then later followed it with the 4-page trip counts.
I don't think.
You know what, no, I had an email that referenced a future letter. I'm not sure that we received the future letter, I'll be honest with you. We saw a summary table in
Okay.
the email.
Yeah. That's
So
what
not
I'm
with
used to.
with the map and the route, oh, okay.
No, the only thing I saw was a summary of what you guys had hashed out
Sure.
and reported to us. I had not seen anything beyond that.
Okay. Did you have a specific question about it, other than seeing the
How did we
backup
get
data?
those numbers is what I want
Okay,
to know.
okay.
So
How did they get those numbers?
We just want to see the backup.
we
Oh,
just want to
okay.
see the backup
Okay.
on
The
it.
summary, the
Okay.
chart, but we never saw backup data.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make copies for you.
She's
And
gonna
that's
make
not
copies. Okay.
unusual for us to see the
Okay.
summary, or see the backup.
No,
of-
I know. I actually thought we had sent it in.
While she's making copies of it, but.
All right.
So those 6 trips different.
It's not like you sent emails on this.
So Nolan, if you could use the microphone.
Just 1 or 2?
It's like 4 pages, yeah.
So Alan, we'll get that, come back to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I'll give it back to you.
Is there any public access to this project?
Public access.
Yeah.
If I go into the brewery, right, I'm assuming that's a public access point?
Yeah, from Titus Ave to the brewery
parking
and to
lot
the
ag-
market building and that one parking
The
lot.
proposed parking lot?
Yeah.
So anything that would be south of some line? And how are we delineating that?
We have a fence line in front of the first residential building from that parking lot. And we've talked about whether we'd put a small sign for, private road further ahead.
Because I just asked about a sidewalk over on Lorraine
Yeah.
Drive to get to the
Yeah.
brewery, and I was told that people are not gonna be cutting through the private area to go to the brewery.
With their cars, for sure.
All right, so that brings me back, I guess, to my sidewalk question. Because now I just got 2 different answers.
Okay.
I don't believe you
Yeah.
got 2 different
Yeah.
answers, Alan, and, the answer to your question was, how are we gonna delineate the residential from the commercial area? And yes, as you pull in, as you approach the brewery, there's gonna be parking on the right, and it's gonna say residents only going forward, driving through. I don't really see, and it's not really part of our plan, to look at people to park on the Lorraine Drive parking lot to enter through Stranahan Park 2 blocks away with the intention of coming to the brewery. It just doesn't make sense. The employees, it's an employee parking lot. The employees that park in the parking lot on Lorraine Drive.
Right, but when I asked about the sidewalk, I was told that they would probably walk up that drive.
Correct. Our employees that leave that parking lot will come up come up the private drive or go over toward Baker's Park. But there's really no reason for our employees to park in that parking lot and then walk out to Titus Avenue.
All right. There's only one snow storage area listed on there. So all the snow from all the property is gonna be loaded out to that one storage area that I see?
No, that is the only area that generates enough snow where we really have to have piles besides that. Most of the other areas, the way they're plowed is they'll create a ridge on the sides of the roads, the way the town plows and that do more traditional. But once you're plowing in a parking lot, you can't do that. You have to create a pile somewhere. So we have a loader where we can actually physically pick snow up and move it, different than just pushing it around. But,
Thank you.
that is the only area where we see the need for a snow storage pile.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess my real question also, or to lead on to another question, then the snow storage, Titus Avenue is the only place to put it?
From Titus Avenue.
That's where it's showing on my plan.
Right, in the grassy area, we wanna push it off of that parking lot in that direction.
So when I'm driving down Titus Avenue, I'm gonna see that snow pile until probably June, because the way it doesn't melt.
Yeah, sometimes, but we tend to move it around. I mean, we wanna keep our project, and as we have always, keep it looking as pristine as possible. I don't think anybody can claim to drive on I-Square and seeing it look unmanaged, certainly with regard to seasonal
Yeah,
activities.
Okay, I think that that's something that I think that the board should, unless you can come up with another suggestion on that, I'd like to. The refuge, where are the actual toters being stored for the residential areas?
They're gonna be go ahead. I was gonna say, they're gonna be located between the, units, in different positions. So the 5-unit, will be located toward the, back, well, I guess it would be the front corner of it.
Can you just give me a direction instead of front corner, because I don't.
Sure, Ellen. It is the southeast corner of that 5 building. There will be totes stored over there.
Right?
With the two duplexes will have units between them, and then between the duplex and the 3 single units, we'll have another one. There's going to be 5 locations throughout the development that have totes in them for our residential trash.
All right. The, do we know, I don't remember, and I know that you answered on the, back to us, these elevations on the community building and on that extension, I don't remember what they are, so if you guys
Correct.
can just refresh my memory on those.
Yes.
Because I don't remember seeing them drawn anywhere.
Correct. Bernie had asked the question. We originally provided a photo illustration for the expansion on the barn to give a feel for the way the building would look. But building material, structure, and size for the common building will follow the like of the residential units. And for the barn unit, the expansion, we're looking to use some type of a repurposed wood, something in the dark that won't compete with the brick, but without adding new brick onto a existing older school looking brick building.
So when you're telling me the, that community building is gonna look like the residential building?
Correct. It'll-
Which residential building?
Right, it'd be most similar to the duplexes. Just
To the
shape of it.
duplex?
Correct.
Okay, so that's 2,400 square feet, and the other ones are 1,800 square feet.
Yes.
And what's the purpose for the common building?
The common building will serve as a number of different purposes. One for our residents to use because the apartments are small. If they have a family gathering or something of the sort, they'll be able to reserve that space. Also, it's adjacent to the brewery, and we could have a dinner event or something like that in there as well. It'll be a multi-use building, might be a better description than common,
Okay,
but like a mini meeting facility on that site. So we have the
so it will be open for rentals and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we don't see a whole lot of outside rentals taking place because it's competing more with the Arundecoit Conference Center on Baker's Park. It has that, and so does the Imaginarium. So we don't see a lot of demand, but the brewery side of it may have some attraction there that we're keeping that window open.
Okay. What are the brewery's hours of operation?
The brewery, it won't operate past 10 p.m. For our closing time. The daytime or the times of operation vary because we'll have manufacturing time and producing beer where there aren't customers present in the building that will begin as early as 8 in the morning. But we won't have patrons in there likely noon on some days that we open at lunchtime, but most days 4 o'clock, following our similar service hours at I Square.
Okay, and how many average employees do you expect to be in there?
In the brewery, it'll have 3, probably would be an average. It's gonna be 2 or 3 people in there, depending if we're serving and brewing or just serving.
And are you going to be serving food in there?
Yes, you have to by liquor law.
And then, you don't know who's doing this project yet, right? Who the builder's going to be?
Most likely be Lefroy Builders on the construction activity and the primary site work.
All right. And then do we have a start date on the project, a completion date? And without any of those, do you have a staging date for when you'd like to have things done?
We have a start date, which was about 3 days ago, that we had kind of earmarked for when we were going to begin construction. So we have everybody waiting in the wings to get rolling on a whole lot. So it would be as soon as next week.
Okay.
We're very much under the time gun at this point.
And then an end date?
For the, as it's currently laid out, will take us through the 2019 construction season.
So everything that we're going to approve tonight, you'll have done by the fall of 2019?
That is correct.
All right. And then we're going to complete everything. We don't expect any steps or staging this and that, right?
I wouldn't expect any, no. We're going
Okay.
to continue.
All right. That'll,
Now that we have this in front of us, could you please walk us through this?
Certainly. Diane, can you
Traffic
address the
study.
traffic study? I need my,
Yep, all set with it, thanks, Mike.
Thank you, I was gonna say.
Oh, and you wanted us to go through this, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And does this include the construction truck trips for soil movement?
Oh, soil moving?
Okay.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry, you're asking if the traffic study does? No. I think, what they looked at back in 2012, they compared, the pre-I-square development with the post-I-square development. And then for this analysis, they looked at the results of the post-I-square development versus the impact of moving this expansion over to Lorraine and Vercruz. So from Lorraine's standpoint, since the post-I-square development back in 2012 didn't adjust or make any changes to Lorraine, it's almost like the post-I-square 2012 development versus the current proposed plan is the comparison of the Lorraine impact.
I just want
That
to make
makes
sure
sense.
that I understood what you said.
Pardon me?
I would just want to make sure I understood what you said,
Okay.
so I'm going to rephrase it, and you tell me if I got
Okay,
it
all
right.
right.
Okay. So this traffic study is
Yep.
the first time you did a traffic study. You compared essentially the area before I Square to the area with the full build out afterwards.
That's correct.
And this time that you're doing it, you're comparing the partially complete I Square to the full build out.
No.
No, that's why I rephrased
yes,
it.
Yeah. So, and I might have said it wrong, which is why you thought that. So, it's the full build out. So it's
Okay.
the post I Square comparison back from 2012 compared to what changes this proposal would have against that. Because remember, we're taking predominantly the same square footage and
Yes.
moving it to a
Okay.
different location. So they're looking at what would the difference be,
Okay.
having it in a broader, larger footprint.
So we're actually comparing all the buildings if they had been constructed, right?
That's right.
Okay.
So with the full build out.
Well, this is helpful on the explanation at least. I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I thought we had sent it in between one of our discussions.
We got the summary, we never
Okay.
got the base data. And then the construction trips, are those somewhere?
They're
Actually-
not in here, but we did send, yeah.
As part of the seeker analysis, so I was gonna
Okay.
review that with all of you. We do analysis of what the potential impacts are for that.
Thank you.
But I do believe the applicant also addressed that particular issue, indicating that during construction, the number of truck trips that might be generated to transport fill or construction-related debris to and from the site. And so that's referenced as part of the seeker analysis.
Any other questions on the traffic analysis, since we just got it?
I have one. You have it categorized as specialty retail center. Can you explain to us what that actually means? Because when you're talking about the grocery, like the area in the front that might be more grocery, does that really fit under the category of specialty retail center? What does specialty retail center mean, as opposed to retail center?
Okay. I think the use type, yeah, Mike, do you have the answer to that? I'm looking at the use type from the original was the retail office combination.
Yes,
Which
no,
is
I
the
don't,
specialty,
I don't have a
yeah.
clearer answer than that.
Yeah.
I believe that when they do the traffic study, they have to select a category of
Most
business.
Yeah.
closely, because
Yeah.
I was looking at stuff today, and there's like tables and all kinds of things, and and some things seemed like other things, but then they didn't. And then it was really important the way that I looked. If I looked at the descriptions to find the best match, so that's why I was kind of wondering what specialty retail center exactly was.
Yes, I don't have
Right.
the definition for that, but,
Yeah, but we can find it, we can find that out.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
But I don't know the one off the top of my
it
head.
almost looks like it's it almost looks like it's an updated, vocabulary too.
Okay.
Because they indicate it's the 9th edition
Okay.
vocabulary, so,
Because all the retail is not going to be the same on the site. Like some of it's a brewery, some of it's restaurant, some of it is grocery. So does it all go in the same category? And is that helpful or hurtful to the traffic analysis? I don't know.
Right, it did, for one thing, that when they had done this, they had done the same analysis for the parking spots and estimating how many we should have.
Okay.
Was also the same engineer involved in the traffic side of things, so.
Okay.
I feel that it's a match, I just can't explain it. to you,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, on the traffic study. Okay, Mr. Nolan, I just have a quick question on the common building. I just want to confirm, it's actually going to be 2 stories? Is that going to be?
It is shown as 2-story, cause that's where we have a bit of grade difference in there.
Is it
and
going
it's
to be useful 2
appropriate.
stories, or is it going to be just the?
It'll
big
be a
roof?
functioning 2-story space, yes.
Okay,
We feel the need, we may have storage needs or other that in the development with apartments, with people downsizing, that we have some.
thank you. That was the only question I had. Jack, any question?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Solomon?
no questions, thank you.
Mr. Huber?
Thank you for adding the crosswalks. Looks nice. The other thing was, in the questions, I was wondering about the notation of the harp-style lamp fixtures on Titus Avenue, and I looked. There was lots of stuff going on the light plan, and I may be remiss. I didn't see it. Is it notated, or can we notate it, or?
We left that off there, and again,
Okay.
we were very much limiting the changes.
Okay.
And we were, unsure whether we would have approval to move forward, and hated to overpromise on things that if, this isn't moved forward, that we wouldn't be able to do.
Okay.
Certainly, we'd welcome that as a condition of your
Okay,
approval.
cool.
Because that is our direct intention. is
Yeah.
to follow
Understood.
suit, and it only makes sense because they're just to block down, to keep it all continuous, and
Continuous, yeah.
that front look, it would be very much appropriate to do that.
I'm gonna echo Mr. Richards' concern about the buffering on Lorraine Drive, because I looked at the plant that were being specified, and maybe the roses, but none of the other stuff really appeared to be evergreen, and none of the stuff really seemed like it would get much taller than a foot or two. And so I have concerns about the folks that are looking across the street, as well as the folks who are beside. I noticed that the type of plantings that were included there for the buffering were locust trees. They'll lose their leaves in the winter. Also, they don't start branching up until higher up, so maybe something a little bit more robust, maybe, I don't know, stockade fencing, I don't know, something like that. So I just wanted to echo that comment. The next thing was when I also have concern about the fencing going across the creek. I don't want to go back into that because I think that's been brought up. The right-of-way was something also that I noticed when I looked at the aerial view of the properties where it was sort of overlaid over the existing conditions. I could see that the curbing on Lorraine Drive was probably intentionally positioned outside the right-of-way so that you stay out of that, but then it would create a gap between the edge of the pavement and the curbing. So then what would go there, that's when I was like unsure because nothing was noted. Then when I looked at the aerial, I could see that there was a sidewalk up. There's a gap. So there's the house beside it. It doesn't have a sidewalk, but then there is a sidewalk. It seemed natural to place a sidewalk there. Eventually, hopefully they would connect, and right now it's just a gap of one piece, especially if we want to keep people out of the road. And going back to the evergreen plantings, one of the things that we did with Chase was we had, when they came to put their parking lot, upgrade their parking lot on the corner of Cooper and Titus, we had asked them to put evergreen shrubbery there, but then we also asked for the faux wrought iron fencing there, which they did, so that might be something that we could talk about doing there. The toters, Mr. Richard has asked about that, so I know where they're going to be for the houses or the cottages. Where are they going to be for the brewery? And is that's enough? The toters will be enough for the brewery?
Yeah, it was surprising. We went and I've been on a brewery tour for the last couple of weeks, and going around, they have actually very little waste.
Okay.
The waste product from the process itself, farmers will take from your pickup at no charge, which there's stored in drums and the byproduct from it. But it's really it's a very fluid process, so it gets consumed, it goes down the drain, or it's in the mash, which is they make dog biscuits and different breads from the byproduct of the beer process. But because that product is then kegged, there isn't a packaging thing, and so it's a very kind of a green process naturally, and produces very low waste. So the waste that is produced in that facility would be things like the grain sacks, lunch bags, and tray, anything from the food service side a little bit, but very minimal. I Square, or the marketed I Square, being a 7,000 square foot facility, we use a 6-yard dumpster, which would be the equivalent of 9 totes.
Are they going to be in some type of a tote enclosure, or where do the 9
plan
totes
on it.
sit?
On the side of the houses, they may have a little decorative fence across just to block from the roadside view.
Yeah.
But really, they function best as being a little bit loose. We want to pick them up and bring them out for a common pickup.
Then this is just an honest question. Is when I go to work in the morning, I know that the Genesee Brewery is much larger in scale than this brewery is, but it smells. Is there going to be any type of odor emitted from the brewery that may?
No, not in this level process. Our biggest batch would be something Jenny runs to test, to taste it, and it doesn't really have a lot. It does inside. We've toured the breweries we've toured during their actual brewing and cleaning process. You get a little bit of an odor in there, no different than if you get an odor in your kitchen when you're cooking, that type of thing. But it was exhausted out of the building. It wasn't, I got nothing. And this was over on Empire where they have 4 breweries all within 3 or 4 block area. And got a really nice tour of one of them though, and all the ins and outs, and we asked them a lot of the same questions that you're asking me.
Okay. And the street parking on Lorraine was not included in the calculations, right?
Correct.
And there's also parking on the end of Stranahan Park near Titus. Whether people are parking there legally or not, I'm unsure, but I know that people are parking there. So I wanted to bring up that I don't believe that those are included in the parking calculations. And I don't want to go over it again, but I do share the same concerns about the parking numbers as Mr. Richards.
Can I, real quick, I just want to go back on one thing that Brad asked. Maybe I just missed it. Did you state where the toters were going to be located for the brewery? I'm sorry, I didn't.
For the brewery, I never got to
Okay.
the answer. No, you're right. It would be on the west side of the brewery. There's a stockade fence along between myself and the parking lot of the neighbor's doctor's practice there, and that's where we had a few outdoor storage things going down that side. You won't see them from any angle from virtually anywhere, but it'd be on the west side of the brewery would be the best description.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's not a public meeting, so
Hey,
Staff could, if there's any comments from the Conservation Board, staff can report on them.
yeah, I'm going to plan on updating the board on memos received by staff and the comments that were made at the most recent Conservation Board meeting. I'll be updating them. Thank you.
Point of order, in the past, we've been allowed to speak not within the public hearing.
Does staff have a report from the Conservation Board, or do you have minutes from when this was discussed?
So the report that was issued by the Conservation Board was furnished to the Planning Board. You all were in receipt of that. My understanding is at their meeting last week on March 7th, the Conservation Board did discuss the application, and that the minutes from that meeting are not yet available. However, I was going to relay the comments that were made through that meeting that would be reflected in the minutes, because the meeting minutes haven't been created yet. And so I'll do that once the board is all ready. I'll update you on the memo that was provided by the fire marshal related to this, the memo that was prepared by Commissioner of Public Works related to the application. And then I was going to also provide that update at the same time.
Yeah, and if I could just ask Harry that you confer with the Conservation Board member that's here, just to get his input and hear what he has to add potentially to.
I certainly will do that.
Thank you.
any other questions?
Yeah, I had one as I've been sitting here, we've been talking. The space north of the brewery parking lot, between the lot and Titus Avenue, is there a plan for that? It's one of those spots that, like 50 and 51 doesn't have any landscaping drawn into it.
Correct. The area in front there has this beautiful, huge oak tree there. It really is the centerpiece of that yard, and it doesn't require a lot of landscaping. We will, at some point, make separate application to install a sign out there once we have the brewery named and everything, and we're able to provide you enough for that. That would go out there, and but it's intended to remain as green space,
Perfect.
and it'll be fitting with the other neighboring.
It would be remiss of you to cover up the front of that brewery, so,
I want a nice green, good look in there.
thank you.
Any other questions, gentlemen? At this point? No? Any ladies?
No.
Okay, so at this point, if you could have a seat, we do reserve the right to call you back up for future questions. And with this, Carrie, would you like to go over the seeker at this point?
First, can I give you the update on the memos that you received that we just referenced?
I thought you were gonna do part of it.
Oh, well, I'll talk about this, I'll talk about those sort of as separate items. So in your packets, you should have received a memo from the Deputy Fire Marshal, George, who reviewed the application and in there indicated that that the requirements set forth in the fire code of state of New York are being complied with in the site plan. So he saw nothing in the review that raised an alarm or a concern as far as access to any site, any part of the site, and or the emergency responsibility to address emergencies at the property or any portion of the property. Then there's also a memo from the Commissioner of Public Works just to finalize or formalize the department's stance on what may or may not be a 20-foot easement through the creek area. And so when you see in his memo, which was, there we are. And every time people write my title, they write it a new way. So it's always interesting. But they indicated that we're not even clear whether or not this easement has been officially filed with Monroe County Clerk's Office, which would make it an official easement, so it may have been a holdover. But if in fact it is filed and hasn't been abandoned, that he doesn't think the easement is valid, and if it was, there is no issue with the proposed design.
Carrie,
Yes.
real quick, back on the fire marshal's comment.
Yep.
Can I just make a request? This is really more of a building-related issue. Can I just make a request that the fire marshal specifically review hydrant location? I know the code is very clear on what they expect there.
Yeah, and so, just so you're aware, I mean, prior to all of the utilities required on the property are gonna be located and approved by our department if necessary. So the fire marshal would be in contact with the developer for sure. That would be one of the conditions.
Want to make a check?
And then the last item that, as I mentioned before, at the Conservation Board meeting that was held on March 7th, the meeting minutes for that have not yet been prepared, otherwise we would have provided them to this office, or to this board, excuse me. The board wanted to reiterate its comment number 6 on the memo that it issued regarding their concern about the portion of fence that crosses the creek. Their outline preference would be that the fence terminate at the crest of the bank on either side of the creek, and there not be a panel that physically crosses that creek. So they wanted just to have that reiterated. That was the comment that was made at the Conservation Board meeting, and that would be reflected in the minutes.
I do have a question. Do we have an updated part 1?
There is an updated part 1 that was received with the, and bear with me, it was with other things. There was an updated letter of intent dated February 22nd, received February 23rd, that should have been provided, and it was attached to that. And some of the items that, there were a couple of minor changes that were made, and I'd be happy to even outline what they are if that's
That would be
easier.
wonderful. Yes.
Okay. And so for the purposes of comparison, I'll grab the first one so bear with me while I stroll through yes, could you please, the back one?
I don't remember seeing it, so.
Yeah, can you just rip it out for me? 'Cause we don't need it anymore. Thank you. Okay. There we are.
Sorry.
No, we're good. So the first thing I'll have you note is on question number 3, there were sort of just the more detailed calculation of acreages included and addressed. On question number, bear with me, I will get to where the changes that take place. You'll go to question 13A. And that has been changed from no on the original to yes in the updated, to reflect that there is a creek that crosses, and it is a state regulated water body, and so that's been updated. And then, the answer to 13B was, remained no, and the comment inside the form indicated there will be no disturbance on or in the bed or bank of stream. And I'm looking to see, question number 17 was modified to yes in the main area, and then remained no and no in the A and B sub-questions. And then additional language was provided at the bottom that indicates that stormwater will be managed on site through several alternative methods, including permeable concrete parking areas and drive aisle, rainwater harvesting barrels, and depression areas as bioretention areas. And then I believe that the remainder of the questions remained the same. And I think that captures the main changes that were, I take back one more. The item number 2 on page 1, I apologize for missing this. Question number 2 was changed was marked as yes on the updated version, indicating that they may need DEC permitting related to any activity on or near the state-regulated creek.
And that would also include the funding that we've heard mentioned.
And that would include, so the funding is the funding is, and that includes the state funding as well. And they mentioned the Environmental Facilities Corporation for funding for pervious concrete is listed right here as narrative on the form.
And then question 9 to me doesn't seem completed.
So, number 9, that means if you're exceeding, so they're meeting the state energy code, if it's only when you're exceeding it. So if you were doing a LEED certified building, you might indicate how you're exceeding the state energy code. If you're meeting it, you don't have to provide any narrative to explain how you're meeting it. It says if a proposed action exceeds requirements, then you describe the design features.
Right.
So that can be a simple yes on that one.
Okay.
That just gives you an opportunity to brag if you want to brag for a minute. So actually, that might be a good starting point if you want to do a review of the part 2 and part 3. So
Hold on, Carrie, let us catch up.
I'm sorry. Here, let me take this away.
You're gonna start with part 2?
Well, yeah, so as you go through the checklist of questions, okay, sorry. Michelle's just trying to clean me up for a second here, so mostly so I don't lose her paperwork. So as you go through the questions on the part 2, you're going to notice that in all the categories, we've indicated no or small impact may occur. And given the scope of the project, we've done a really detailed part 3 narrative to sort of walk through why the part 2 is recommending those answers. And so in part 3, which is the backside of the page, it just says see attached narrative. So if you look at the narrative, we talk about the fact that this is both a site plan approval and an EPOD permit issuance, 2 separate EPODs. Permits are required based on the boundaries that cross onto the properties included in this, the scope of this site plan application. It's an unlisted action. And as we described in the for the town board, when these properties were rezoned, we talked about the fact that the general area is located on or adjacent to a town's primary east-west arterial. It's characterized by a mix of residential and converted residences, professional offices to the east, and more traditional commercial development pattern to the west, approaching the intersections of Cooper Road and Hudson Avenue. It's sort of the mixed-use commercial sort of heart of the town. When we look at impacts to land use and community character, without sort of reading verbatim, I'll just mention that the proposed project utilizes some existing buildings currently present. Example would be the barn, redevelopment of previously developed areas of land, and development of new areas previously used for greenhouses. The new buildings proposed for the expansion of I-Square are consistent with the design guidelines established for the district. Although the footprint of I-Square development is larger than initially conceived. The proposed physical build-out, meaning total square footage of buildings, is remaining consistent with that was approved originally back in the 2012 site plan approval. So there was no new square footage being contemplated as part of this site plan application. Existing and proposed buildings along Titus Avenue maintain a consistent setback and building line. They support the design preferences outlined for the district, and proposed parking on the larger footprint, meaning the former Vercruysse, was showing largely parking behind the existing or future buildings, which is consistent with the town comprehensive plan. Overall, looking at the proposed development, we look to the comprehensive plan for consistency, and you'll see that I've provided some excerpts from the comprehensive plan that seem to support the proposed development concept that's being laid out in the site plan. Given that the development's located on or near a major arterial, it's contiguous to existing mixed-use development, particularly those fronting on Titus Avenue, potential adverse and large or moderate adverse impacts to community character and land use are minimized. And then additionally, the scale, setback, and style of existing buildings on Titus are consistent with the proposed development and the new zoning district that's in place. It's also the development, the mix of buildings and amenities is supported in the comprehensive plan, and it does have a mix of housing sort of next to other housing and a mix of commercial or semi-commercial buildings along where the commercial buildings are. So for that reason, we're seeing that as a small or no impact to community land use or character. When we look at potential impact to land, the proposed concept proposes approximately, give or take, 36,000 square feet of new mixed-use buildings in the expanded portion of the development footprint. That's going to achieve the full I-Square build-out that was originally proposed and approved by the Arundequoit Planning Board back in 2012. The expanded development area includes additional parking, a significant portion of which is going to be constructed with pervious pavement, similar to the paved areas in the existing I-Square development footprint. The proposed site plan also includes significant areas of green space being preserved as part of the development project to buffer natural features included in the town's environmental overlay districts. Implementation of compact development and use of sustainable practices is helping to minimize or mitigate impacts to land. Additionally, the proposed grading will not impact the existing stream bed buffer or steep slopes. They're proposing treatments that are going to help secure and stabilize the stream bank. And then when we look at the fill, there is about approximately 4,100 and change cubic yards of new fill. The applicant, so that is going to be a slight change. However, the additional fill could help to mitigate potential issues with soil on the property from the past greenhouse. So it may mitigate other things that the developer is going to be addressing through their subsequent approvals related to the building of especially for the residential component. They'll have to make sure that they'll get health department approval as part of maybe one of the things that they have to achieve before they can construct. And then when we look at surface water, the area, the stream is a protected, is a regulated stream under DEC, and so there's a DEC permitting process that the applicant will have to comply with prior to any work or in their area that they regulate, and so that's one certainly mitigating factor to minimizing impact to the stream. The sustainable design practices that are being incorporated in the project are going to minimize impact to surface water. They're going to control stormwater. The project is also subject to the preparation of a stormwater pollution prevention plan, otherwise known as a SWIP, in the development and engineering worlds. That SWIP is going to outline erosion control and sediment control measures to ensure that the nearby water surfaces are protected, and so that'll also minimize potential impacts associated with the project. So now when we look at potential impact to traffic, obviously the footprint is expanding, however, the amount of buildable space or occupiable square footage is really remaining the same from the original. And as you look at the documentation that was provided, it's the threshold for it being deemed moderate or large would be that it's going to be a substantial change in traffic. And based on the information that was provided by the applicant's engineer, while there might be a minor change, there might be a change, it wasn't categorized as substantial or major when it comes to the guidance that we get from the seeker workbook. Additionally, the site is served, it's located adjacent to and served by Titus Avenue, which has a well-connected sidewalk system. It's served by Lord and help me, public transportation, and so the site's fairly accessible from multiple modes. And so for that reason, we're seeing that as a low to a small or no impact on traffic. I think also additionally we pointed out that because on Lorraine Drive there is showing a parking facility there. However, because it's being provided largely to serve as a employee parking, there certainly are the ability to control direction, and in testimony provided this evening indicated the applicant was going to be blocking off that access from Lorraine, at least right now, to make sure that it's not generating traffic that doesn't currently exist. However, I'd also point out that as the redevelopment is occurring, it's replacing homes. So it's not like this was greenfield that's turning into something. It's a change in the use and the type of use, but it wasn't going to be something that would generate so much new traffic that was deemed a potential large or moderate impact to be further analyzed at this time. As we look at energy use and utilities, the site is located in the heart of Irondequoit. There's ample resources available from a utility and energy standpoint. This project isn't going to bring those providers into any. They'll have an ability to serve the site with no problem. When we looked at impact of noise and light and odor, we did obviously, now there's going to be some new lighting. The developer has been sensitive as to where the lighting is being placed, and we'll use dark sky compliant fixtures, at least on the interior, to minimize light spill and ensure that it's not going to become an issue for neighboring properties. During construction, there may be noise associated with construction. The noise is temporary. It is controlled by our noise ordinance as to terms of the hours of operation. And then dust and things related to the temporary construction period where you're doing fill and that kind of thing can be controlled. And the applicant indicated in one of the items that was submitted in writing that they would be doing, water controlled, to dampen down, to control dust during demolition and during site work, so as needed to minimize impact in those regards. And the other sort of indicator from a seeker standpoint is that's temporary in nature. It's not going to be part of the ongoing operation of the site. And so while it may be an item or it may be an impact, it's a temporary one that won't be long-lived, and it will end when the construction ends. And then finally, we look at the impacts to community resources. Again, you have the response from the fire marshal indicating that the area can be served. You have because the residences that are being shown on this expanded footprint are slated to be 55 and older. It minimizes impact to the schools, and then the other community services are able to serve this site and it doesn't raise the bar higher than what was previously examined on that initial development on the smaller footprint. And so for this reason, or for these collection of reasons, we were recommending a negative declaration for the purposes of seeker.
Thank you.
And if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. I know that that's, you know, a summary, and we can,
Very detailed.
yes, well, I try my best.
Is there any questions? on
Yeah,
that?
you need a sip of water after that, I think.
Luckily, I like to talk. No, sorry.
Anybody have any other questions, comments? Any questions for the applicant?
I have
Yeah, Brad, you
I have
go
a question.
first.
I know that we talked a little bit about the cottages being only for 55 and older residents, but is that recorded in any such way, or is that just?
You know, there can be, that's a great, I'm assuming that it can be a condition of the approval, that's part of, that's how it was being presented to the board. So if it were gonna be anything else, if the type of housing that was being accommodated on the site were to change, that could be something that would trigger a revised site plan to come back and look at that as a issue, or if we thought it, and I'm looking to our deputy town attorney to chime in and.
Yeah, and just to echo what Carrie's saying, that essentially would be a finding here, and that's a baseline that you all are analyzing the environmental impacts under. So to the extent that the intensity of use changes or there's a different use of those residential facilities, your analysis may change, and they may need to come back in for revised site plan approval and the subsequent seeker analysis associated with that.
Correct, thank you.
We don't have to make it a condition.
You don't have to make it a condition, but I'd recommend that you make it a finding.
I think that there's a lot of things in this application that we need to look at carefully, and I think that in order to vote in favor of a negative declaration, that there should be some conditions that we consider for the subsequent site plan review.
I'm sorry, Brett, say that again.
Did I say that too fast?
Yes.
I said I think that there's some environmental concerns that could be mitigated through the site plan. So when we get to the site plan, we should really make sure that we consider the seeker narrative very carefully to make sure that we can work on those things through the site plan, through conditions.
And I think, Brad, to your point, it might make sense then for you to share what some of those concerns are now, just so it's a holistic review by the board. So even though they might be environmental concerns that can be addressed as part of the site plan review, it may make sense to have some discussion about them now.
Yeah, my concerns are, one, with the amount of location of parking, two, with the screening that is being proposed on the Lorraine Drive parking lot and at the end of the private drive, and three was with the fence crossing the creek.
I agree. I mean, I couldn't agree more with the things that you've just brought up. If we can mitigate
Through the site
those
plan rather than
through
going
the site
through seeker.
plan as opposed to seeker, I think that would be the preferred way to do it. I do have one question on the seeker, and it may not be seeker, but we had crossover roads that had to build between one project and another. That's not included in this. Are we going to be looking at that?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Like at Royal Car Wash and the Hampton Inn and the plaza next to that, how we had to build a road, an internal
cross-access.
road connecting all three projects. We're not obligated to do that here, or that's just it was for there only?
So that was actually a condition that was put forth by Monroe County Department of Transportation because that addressed their access management needs and the desire to make their roadway operate safely. The Monroe County Department of Transportation, in reviewing this application, did not, the connecting drive is located on private property. It's being proposed as a private drive, not being proposed to be a town road even. And so for that reason, the roadway has been shown to be, it's going to adequately serve, and it's the right size and the right sort of construction to be a functional road. So from that perspective, the town's needs or wants would be satisfied. If there's something specific to the cross-access, are you talking about just other parcels that might be in the vicinity?
The project as a whole. And
Right.
I guess I was confused as to who was determining the So it isn't this board at all that determines that, it's the county that determines that every time?
Yeah, so when it's adjacent, when the parcels are adjacent to a county road, in the case where on Ridge Road, there was 1381, now I'm gonna sound like rain, I'm gonna say, 1381 is the plaza where the Bank of America and the Marshalls is located. There's a drive aisle that goes between the Bank of America and the start of the plaza that does the L shape.
Right.
And then the parcel which was, 1361, am I saying that right? 1365 Royal Car Wash, and then a subsequent parcel behind it, they wanted to ensure that that was their opportunity to create cross access that would also connect to the Hampton Inn, so that in theory, somebody at the Hampton Inn would have a way to get to a signalized, exit point on East Ridge Road, and that is always an opportunity. If they have one, they were in a position to compel that of the applicant.
Thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
So I'd just like to kind of, I guess, agree and echo some of Brad's comments. I also think that a condition should be that the Lorraine Drive curb cut is blocked off until at which point the residential properties may or may not go away.
Right.
I think that's very important for me for the seeker aspect.
And toward that, I think the screening needs to be looked at.
Sorry, until what goes away?
Until the residential business, or, properties are no longer residential. Because as soon as that curb cut is opened up, traffic is going to go that way, and you're gonna have a huge amount of increased traffic on that road. Because everybody's gonna do it to cut the intersection, and Stranahan that's closer to the intersection. It's gonna become the easy way out.
Anybody who sat at that light at Baker to get out, it can tell you,
Employees are
Prefer
gonna
not
wanna
to
cut
wait.
out that back
yeah.
on Lorraine, and I wanna stop that.
No, I got that, so I understand that part, but I was trying to understand until it's not residential.
Those 3 houses are sold.
You're getting very specific, it's the 3 houses, not all of the residential. That's what I'm
The
trying to-
residential on Lorraine, yeah, so the 3
But they're
houses,
not part of
yeah.
the muck at this moment, right?
That's why I wanted
Correct.
clarity.
There are some parcels on Lorraine that are not zoned mixed-use commercial, and so
Just
perhaps
phrase it that way.
what you could say is that as part of this site plan approval, the entranceway to Lorraine Drive needs to be blocked, the end. And then it would only be taken up as an issue in
And
subsequent.
when there was a proposed change.
If there was any, at such time that there was a proposed change, then you
happy
could,
with
that
that.
could be something to
I
revisit.
was just concerned that we
Yep,
were
no, I
we were
understand.
causing a condition that would cause a problem.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I'm
So
fine with
Lorraine
that.
Drive curb cut would be blocked off for this phase of the project?
Yeah,
Is that how you said it?
I'm fine with that, because then it comes back for any approval.
For approval. Okay.
And I have concerns about the fence over the creek. I understand the applicant's desire to maintain security, and that he's having some trouble with some folks cutting through. But he also did mention that there's evidence of deer moving through that area, and by putting that fence over the creek, it's gonna impede that. I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. I'd be comfortable with the fence terminating at either bank of the creek, at the top of the crest of the creek as suggested by the Conservation Board. I know we've all mentioned that we don't feel entirely comfortable with it crossing the creek at 1.5 feet or at 3 feet, or, I think that's something we really need to that it needs to end at the crest of either side.
So, Mr. Chair, I think I don't know if anybody else has more concerns, but we need to move on to take care of the seeker, and I'm willing to advance a negative declaration as an unlisted,
Unlisted action.
action, thank you.
You're making a motion
I'm
for
making
an
a motion that
unlisted
we-
action, negative declaration for
On this, for the purposes of seeker on case PB 1801-4.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? No abstain? That passes. Okay. Having said that, I think I kept track of the conditions.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more item that we talked about.
The ones that I knew, okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I have one more that we did not discuss tonight, but has been discussed with the applicant at previous times, and I believe the applicant agreed to, was the addition of at least one permanently installed bike rack somewhere near the retail building and or the brewery.
Near where, I'm sorry?
The distillery at this point would be the preferred place, I would think.
Yeah, I think the brewery, and personally, I would also say somewhere near the future retail building, because that's where the sidewalk connection comes in off Titus.
So wouldn't that be addressed when we do the building?
Well, you can have the site, you can have the bike rack be addressed now for the barn building, and then have it be, that can be an item,
Part of
You
the
can-
retail when it's approved.
right, you can have the bike rack added now as part of the site plan action associated with the barn, and then subsequent,
Oh, yeah, I'm good with that. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
So near the barn or the common building? Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna give this a try. Let's see if I got it correct. Okay. So, where's my PB number,
I can give it to you.
please?
It's PB 1801-4.
In regards to PB 1801-4, property address 775 and 795 Titus Avenue, 50, 51, 60, 61, 71, 81, 93 Lorraine Drive. There's my case number. That we give preliminary and final site plan approval and sleep slope and water course, oh, I have to do that, right? I do?
You do?
Okay. And water course environmental protection overlay, EPOD, district permits associated with the expansion of the I-squared development located at 775 and 795 Titus Avenue. Once again, 50, 51, 60, 61, 71, 81, 93 Lorraine Drive in a mixed-use commercial district with the following conditions. With the location of a bike rack near the barn or the common building. I have ingress and egress of the parking lot on Stranahan versus Lorraine Drive. Did I get that correct?
No,
No, it's
no,
Lorraine.
just on Lorraine Drive.
that'd be blocked,
Be
I think
blocked.
he's,
Yeah.
There would be no curb cuts allowed.
I got that too, but hold on. So you had an ingress and egress before.
Yeah, so
On
what I
Stranahan.
was
Oh,
putting
I'm talking
forth,
about-
The condition, I think, that was recommended was that ingress and egress be restricted to Baker's Park and Stranahan, not on Lorraine Drive, so long as the parcels on Lorraine remained zoned the way they are currently,
yeah,
the residential parcels.
Right.
And
yes, and just as a point of clarity, I heard that they be blocked
that's,
in some way, so even if there was a curb cut, that they be physically restricted.
that's what I was putting forth. unless
That
you
we allow the curb cuts, but we block the.
block them. That's what I was putting forth as a condition.
Okay.
Do you have comment on that?
So we're not putting a curb along Lorraine? That was my question to the applicant.
There is a partial curb, it's just that it's open to Lorraine.
So during site preparation, the applicant might create the curb cut and the apron. However, there would be some kind of physical blockade placed in the parking lot to prevent somebody from exiting that way, so that physically during construction, it would be developed in the finished format of preferred, but until such time that access out of Lorraine they wouldn't be allowed at this time.
Okay. But my question was, is there going to be a permanent curb put in there? Do we need a right-of-way permit for that? I thought that was my question. That was what I intended.
So
my
that
question to
if the
be.
work extends to the right-of-way or is near it, the applicant will obtain a highway highway permit through the Department of Public Works. Even if you're near the right-of-way, often you're close enough, you need the permit. So that's something that the applicant would obtain prior to the work being done.
I guess what I'm asking then, can that curb be the permanent barrier?
No, because I think he's proposing to put in the curb cut and then just put some concrete bollards or planters or something to restrict the access. So the curb cut will be put in, which I would almost guarantee will require a highway work permit from the
It
town.
will,
Right.
absolutely.
So he'll have to get his highway work permit, and then, at least what I was putting forth was then he just blocks that curb access until which time something happens further on.
Or we can cut that curb out later. I mean, that happens all the time. I see it done.
Yeah, but what is it, I guess, what's the problem with,
I
if
don't,
the applicant wants to spend the money to do it, why do we care if it's blocked?
Okay.
That's my take on it.
as long as it's blocked, I mean, that's my take, and then I want to put in the screening also, but.
Yeah, we
I haven't
can,
gotten there
yeah,
yet.
we'll
Let
talk
me
about
go
that,
through.
yeah.
So I want to make sure I got this correct. Ingress and egress on
No,
Stranahan and Baker Park only, correct?
Not correct.
Okay. And then, no?
If you're restricting it, or you say where it can or can't happen.
He's saying that it's on
Can.
Baker's Park and Stranahan,
Right.
restricted from Lorraine.
And then blocked curb cuts on Lorraine Drive. Okay.
Until such time as, and then the board should
Yeah.
determine what that mechanism is.
It's zoned into.
until there's, or there's future development plans, or, I just wanted to come back to the board for discussion, I guess.
I liked how you had it before until the remaining parcels on Lorraine Drive are
Rezoned
to mixed use commercial.
if ever.
Yes, if ever.
That's how I captured it. Until the remaining parcels are rezoned to mixed use. If ever.
40, well, that opens up a door. We say on Lorraine Drive. What about 41 and 36? Is 36 on Lorraine Drive, or is that on,
36 is not on Lorraine
so
Drive.
just 41? And is 41 not zoned as mixed use?
Talking
commercial?
about the parking lot only, though, at this moment.
Right, I know, but we've just made a condition that everything has to be rezoned as mixed use commercial for them.
So which are the two subject partials that are relevant? Do we have their numbers?
70, 80, and 90, right?
That's what he wants to change right now.
And this is zoned. Carrie, which parcels are still zoned residential?
I believe it's, and we're gonna verify this right now, I believe the rezoning encompassed
I think it's 70, 80, 90,
70,
correct?
yeah, 70, 80, 90, 41
Right.
is my understanding. Excuse me, Deputy Town Attorney.
Yep.
Rather than having it conditioned upon the future rezoning, could it just be a future application before this board for subsequent development on adjacent parcels?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, because I just want it to come back before it gets the opportunity to
Changed.
be opened up. And if for some reason it doesn't get rezoned, but the applicant or someone else comes back with a proposal that we're happy with,
Yeah.
we can open it.
Sure.
So until, Carrie, say that one more time?
I knew you were gonna say that. Until a subsequent application for development comes before the board?
Yeah, and that's better than the parcel numbers you referenced because they're not part of what was in front
They're
of the
outside the
board.
boundary of the
Yep, okay.
application.
I like that.
Okay. Hold on 1 second, Alan, before you.
Can you say that louder for the, no, I'm kidding.
All right. So, Bradley, I captured that, and I'm not sure if this is a condition or a clarification, but that the harp style, lamp style on Titus Avenue remains the same as the other.
Yeah, yeah, that's one.
Okay. You said it a few times, so I wanted to make sure. I have screening of Lorraine Drive parking lot to neighbors. I have more robust,
I think it should include evergreens. I think that it should be non-deciduous vegetation in there that will block the activity for those neighbors.
What do you think about stockade style fencing? Because the trees aren't gonna grow, I mean, very quickly.
I'm in for fencing and the
And
trees.
well, yeah, and the trees. I mean, if you did the fencing, you could probably leave the locust trees because they will take care of the upper area,
Right.
and then the fencing is easier to remove and but then so that would take care of the north and south sides of the parking lot. But what do you want to do on the front side of the parking lot that faces Lorraine?
That's where I think that the evergreen should come in. I mean,
Okay.
I don't, of the height and caliber,
Of what the board wants.
that would,
So guys, I heard more robust, evergreens, but I didn't hear any discussion of a fence. Am I missing something? Or,
no, but we,
No, that's
I
new.
think we're
That's a
talking
new
about
idea.
the same idea, is screening on the north and south side of that parcel as well as on the east side.
But the fencing would be more immediate effect than the trees would be.
To be honest with you, I don't have, especially since he now has acquired 93, I'm not so concerned about the north and south. I want those screens still.
Yeah.
I think that the east side of that property, where there are 3 residential properties still facing there,
So what about doing it the same way that we had asked Chase to do it?
I see no problem with that, with a fence and with the,
The greener with, the,
green,
evergreen
the
shrubs.
evergreens.
I'm personally okay just with the evergreens. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
I think it's the same district. It's near each
You're with-
other, and
I'm good
we
with
have to hold.
evergreens.
I'm good with evergreens too. I need to get a feel from the board here.
I'm good with the fence and the evergreens.
Spence?
Nobody else cares.
I'm thinking.
Mary said evergreens.
I think
Jack
if
said
evergreens are planted at a tight
Yeah.
spacing, I'm okay with just evergreens, but they would have to be pretty wall-like.
In
To-
which
to
case,
create-
which is less expensive to do?
It might be easier to put in a wood stockade fence that can be taken out later. That's an applicant decision.
I'd like giving them the option, if you wanna do that.
Oh, we could give
But
them
I
an
need to-
option.
I'm
Mike, I
fine.
need to hear from you.
I'm fine with the option.
Yeah, I'm fine giving them the. I think if they had the stockade fence or the stockade fence, I guess, and they kept the locust trees, that's more what he had envisioned
So I have the
for
screening.
for the landscaping. But if the stockade fence is something that he's not a fan of, I don't want him to not like the property. So I think the evergreen should be an option. But I would prefer the fence with the locusts.
Cause
But what about
I
the
don't
front?
think we've seen any stockade
The
fences.
front.
What are we
So,
talking about,
There's
right?
there's
Talking about-
all different sides of the parking lot.
So
So-
I was just talking, let's go back to what Alan brought up, which was
East-facing side is what I'm,
which is on Lorraine Drive facing the houses that are not part of the mixed-use commercial.
Right.
So, we'll stick with that for the moment. So screening the Lorraine Drive parking lot to neighbors, more robust, to include either evergreens or fence.
if we put
Everybody's
in
okay
Probably,
with that?
probably not a 4-foot fence.
Whatever fence is approved, approved by the town.
Yeah, I'd suggest deferring to the Office of Planning and Zoning and having them work with the applicant.
Okay. Let me go through the rest of this. I also captured, Mike, because you brought this up a couple times, the silt fence placement, that needs not to be in the creek. Is
Yeah, but that doesn't have to be a condition. That's part of the SWIP plan.
part of this. Okay, well, that's what I had down here.
I had to just get the synapses to fire in order and remember that.
I have a finding, I got more conditions here. So now that I wanted to get to the fence over the creek. So at first we were talking about, and we spent some time discussing a 3 foot above the creek. And then the board seemed to shift towards not liking the fence. So I need to get a feel for where the board is.
After after some of the applicant's testimony on perceived deer trails, after sitting here and thinking about it, and after the discussion the board had, I'm inclined to go no fence, just from crest of stream bank to crest of stream bank.
And Spence?
I don't particularly like it. My personal take on it is that I don't think the DEC is going to allow it anyway. once they get a review. So, I guess, I mean, I don't love it.
You can go either way.
I could go either way, but
No, it has to
because
have a
DEC,
DEC
I mean, DEC, if DEC were okay with it, then I guess, I mean, they know a hell of a lot more than I do, so I would generally be okay with it, but
Alan?
I'm not in favor of the fence.
I'm the same as you, Spence. Whatever the DEC allows, I was okay with.
I go with the DEC.
Same thing.
I'm gonna take the advice of our conservation board. No offense.
Okay, so at this point, it appears that the board feels that the fence could be allowed if the DEC approves. But then I'm gonna say, you want a 3 foot above if the.
Above the high water line, yeah. Or all
Okay.
the 3 foot deer.
Then there was something said about, I don't know if this is a finding, the brewery hours of operations would be no later than 10 PM.
it's a condition.
Condition?
Yep.
Condition? Everybody's okay with that condition? I did not put a start time due to the other conversation that depends on how long it takes to brew. Okay. And a finding is that the residential cottages and buildings, all the residential buildings would be for 55 years and above residents.
It's a finding.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a finding?
Finding,
Yeah.
so it was finding. Is that correct? Did I state that correct?
Mhm.
So upon that, that is the motion.
I've got more to
Oh.
propose.
Yeah, I think we all have a little more.
Okay, conditions?
Yep.
Okay.
Redesign the whole place.
Another pencil?
Alan, you go first. I'll follow
I
you.
might need
No,
a
go ahead.
sharpener here on my pencil, but okay, I need somebody to tell me what we missed.
All right, I feel strongly that the applicant has more parking than necessary. We are over the minimum requirements by quite a bit. Also, when I look at the traffic study, and that's if I'm reading this correctly, it's showing at the peak Saturday hours that the most amount of cars that would be there entering and exit is 227, yet we have 371 parking spots. In addition to that, we are also essentially building out all of the parking before we're building the buildings that are associated with that. So I think that we should be building buildings with the parking lots rather than putting the parking lots out first. The expanded footprint of the site plan brings quite a bit more parking. So when we approved the last when we made the last approval, we were under the impression that there wouldn't be any additional parking in the subsequent phases. Now there is, and there's over and above the required amounts. So I would propose that the parking lot at the front, at the corner of Titus and Cooper, is removed in lieu of green space for the cottages and ice cream people and all of that. It will also more closely align with the MUC guidelines. And then in return for that, we give him the parking that he's looking for in the expanded footprint, because those are two things that are very closely tied to one another. We're way over the amount of parking that we're looking for.
So your motion is, I want to just make sure it's clear.
So my condition would be to eliminate the parking lot at the corner of Titus and Baker's Park, and replace it with green space. I don't know how you would subsequently condition that they would have to do a landscape plan on that.
So I want to just get a feel from the board, how they feel about that. Mike? I'll come back to you, Mike. Spence?
So, hey, I just want to understand, Brad, you're talking about, I'm looking at drawing C-2.
Yep,
You're talking about the area that has a circle with the number 21 in it?
correct. So even if we reduce the parking by 21 spaces, we're still over and above the amount of parking that's required in the site by quite a bit. I'm looking for my notes, but I believe it was 67 spaces over and above. So we still have more spaces than we need. Also, we're not counting any of the on-street parking in Lorraine Drive on this parking study or this map right here. So there's all of that parking on Lorraine Drive. There's a number of parking spots at the north end of Stranahan Park that will also contribute to the space. And in addition to this, right now, this parking is being built predicated on the fact that the rest of the development is made. Right now, we're only looking at approvals for some of these buildings, so we have way more than enough parking because we're assuming that the rest of this is going to be built, which it may never be built. And I feel like now that we have this parking in this other area, which is behind the buildings and in line with the MUC code, like I said the last time, that we complied with the MUC code when we put that in, but we didn't necessarily fulfill the spirit of the guidelines when we allowed that. We call it screening. We know it's something that we don't want to be there to begin with. And I don't know about you, but what if I go for ice cream or something? I want to sit outside and eat it. If I have a dog or something at the cottage, I want to take it out. But there's not really any green space besides on the side of these private drives for people to congregate and be outside. And since we have the extra parking, I think now is the time to go back and rectify that.
So the motion is to rectify a previous approval we gave, I think is the best way I could describe that. So.
I have formulated an opinion.
Okay.
I understand where you're coming from, Brad, but my comment is going to be that Mr. Nolan and the I-Square development have never told someone they cannot park in a lot. And there are a lot of businesses in that area, like the Titus Tavern, for instance.
So should that lot be shared parking? Because that was something we also offered before.
We offered the shared parking, and
It was declined.
and it was declined. Yes, but I don't
feel like you can have it both ways.
I gotta let him finish his, I gave you your chance, Brad, so please, if you got.
I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think we need to change that now because it's acting as a community parking space, same as what Fairport has.
The same.
You're shaking your head no, but
Because it's not recorded.
Guys, I don't want to debate, I just want to get opinion.
yep, I'm going to say I don't want to change the parking on Baker's Park and Titus Avenue.
Mr. Reed? I can come back to you.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Mr. Richards?
I think Mr. Huber's a lot more generous than what I would be at this moment. I wouldn't give you any more parking until you justified the parking with new buildings. I'm in agreement to share or to swap the parking one for another. I think that is a good trade. The parking lot actually hasn't been constructed that faces Titus Avenue at the moment. So it right there tells me there isn't a great need for this parking. I also, in my questioning, asked what I would see when I drove down Titus once Verkuzzi's came down, and I was told I would see green space. Well, I'm going to see a little green space, but I'm going to see a parking lot with cars parked on it. That's what I'm going to see. I'd prefer not to see a whole lot of that. And, you know, I understand that we're basing this on good nature, that everything's going to happen within the timeline, but I'm also looking at well past 19 at this moment for a new building to be built there. So is that what I want, is parking on Titus Avenue and no buildings? No, I could support Mr. Huber's condition.
Okay. I'm leaning more towards Mike. I don't support reopening this.
I'm leaning toward Brad.
I've gone down to I-Square several times and not been able to find a place to park because it's overwhelmed with customers. And that was before the Imaginarium went in. I also used businesses that are along there, and the only way you're going to get out on Titus Avenue is to park in I-Square parking. I just think we should leave it alone. As far as too much parking, I don't think so. When you get employees in there, as these places go up, you're going to get employees.
So no, I say no.
Okay. Mr. Reed?
Oh, I'm really struggling with this. I liked where Mike was going with shared parking conversations, and that was brought up last time. I I totally agree with you. I think that the parking locale does play into it a little bit. As far as, access to what lots.
The number of parking spots can be recouped other places on the site. So, for instance,
No, I know, 93 especially, if, and, I mean, I know we're not looking at
Right.
that
Yeah,
today,
it's
but
not-
the
not
rest
part
of
of this.
Lorraine Drive, could always be parking in the future too, but.
he needs 66 spots above the number, and the traffic study does not support that number of parking, those number of people being there at the same time.
I mean, I know we had problems with that when we were talking in workshops and so on. I think I would probably be in support of eliminating that parking lot. I don't know where that puts us, but.
Eliminating 21.
Yep.
So,
Can you address the board?
I'm sorry?
Can you address the board in this, or no?
No.
No.
I just want to make sure, I'm going to have a hard time supporting that, considering all the work we did previously. And I'm really leaning towards Mary and what Mike said, so to me it puts well, I'd probably abstain, because I couldn't support that.
It wouldn't be an appropriate circumstance to abstain from
Then I'd
voting.
Probably decline.
So, and that's fine, that's your prerogative. Someone could make the motion when all the conditions are discussed with that condition included, and it could be called to a vote, and you could see what the board's pleasure is on it.
Well, yeah,
A decision doesn't have to be made at this point, we're just coming up with a motion for the board to consider.
So, give me the wording again. You want to eliminate parking?
To eliminate the parking lot at the corner of Titus and Baker's Park in exchange for green space. I think that's everything that I would need to say.
Wouldn't you have to name the green space? Oh, you want for green space there?
Yes.
How-
Currently, if you're looking for an identifier.
Well, what I'm saying is then he could never put a building there, which he said, I believe, when we deliberated this, that someday he could always change that parking lot to a building.
Which I'd
And he
be
still
fine with
can.
too.
It would
if
still
he's-
have to come back
It
for
would still have to
approval,
come
and
back.
we could approve it at that point, could we not?
Because yeah, we've made changes to a previous site plan. A subsequent person could make
If
changes.
you wanted to move it from a parking lot to a building, he would still have to come back here.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
not creating a
I think what I
condition.
heard you say is like, how do we be specific about the green space?
Well-
Is that what you're saying?
I wanted to make sure if we said green space that we weren't making it a permanent green space. And
Oh,
instead of-
okay. How do we be more specific about the green space? So that it's not just grass.
Well, I think you need to discuss what exactly you're looking for, but you have to be reasonable about it in the context of the town's site plan review regulations and what you're trying to achieve. And what I was also going to suggest, the folks that are recommending or suggesting that this condition be added to the motion, you may want to discuss a bit and include some more of the reasons for why you want to do that relative to some of the things that Brad mentioned and Alan and Spencer mentioned. I'd suggest a bit more of a discussion on that if this is to be included as a condition for a board vote.
Well, I think, when we approved the previous application, I don't know, whatever that was, roughly a year ago or thereabouts, to allow that parking lot, I think I approved it under the idea that there was no other options for parking and parking was needed. And I don't think that's the case that we're talking about now. I think we are adding parking lots, and I think we're actually adding parking lots in the places they should be, which is what the MUC regulations talk about, being behind buildings and so on. So I think the parking lot, on Lorraine and behind the proposed retail building is very appropriate for what we're looking for. And I think we only approved it where it is, or I think I only approved it, I guess I can only speak for myself, based on the fact that under that application, parking was a definite issue, and that was the only place we had left to put it. That's my,
And to tie that directly to the master plan, it says, creating a gathering space for appropriate outdoor activities and enhancing the green space along the street, which is exactly what this would be doing.
I think that this falls in line with the master plan on the muck. Additionally, I will echo what my colleague just stated here, that when we were presented the information to begin with, we were actually talked about the segmentation that might be involved if we considered other parking and other parameters that were beyond that application. Today we're faced with another situation that I believe we should allow for parking where it's needed, but I also believe we should allow parking where it's supported. The traffic study is not supporting the additional parking. In addition to that, the buildings don't exist at this moment. What we're looking at is for buildings that aren't built yet. If this is truly a designed to make an urban village, I think that this is a great way to do it. So I would like to, again, restate my support.
So it's eliminate the parking lot in the corner of Titus and Baker Park for green space.
Can I say something?
Oh, sure.
I think we're all forgetting that that's also the parking for the House of Guitars. If you go out in front and it's full, they have no choice but to park in the I-Square parking lot. If you want to go in the side door, you have to go through the parking lot. Where are you going to park? You're going to park in the parking lot.
House of Guitars has parking in the original area. They have it on the side of the building and in the rear of the building. There's lots of places for the House of Guitars parking. Also, the applicant indicated before that he was not willing to share parking. I mean, he is informally, but not on paper. So there's lots of places. In addition, this parking lot is way over, if we allow it the way it is, it's 87 parking spaces above the minimum, plus the amount that's not accounted for. So there's lots of places to park. I know that some of my favorite places, I park and walk. There's lots of places where parking is not necessarily immediately adjacent to the building, but it doesn't make any impact on the viability of the building.
But on the same respect, if somebody's got 5 children and going to the Imaginarium, they're not going to walk like you do. They're going to park in a parking place close.
I hear what you're saying, but it's also important to consider the uses of the buildings. So the Imaginarium is only open till 4 o'clock and is open during the day. With a restaurant, which is the one that's putting the most use on the parking lot, is only usually biddy towards the evening. And so the uses of the sites help to offset when the parking is in demand. And now with the employees out of there in a employee parking lot, one of the things that I looked at closely was how far this extended parking lot is from the existing building. And it's 300 feet, according to Google Maps. And 300 feet is the same distance from the rear entrance of this town hall to the rear entrance of the library. It's also slightly shorter than the front hallway at Irondequoit High School. I also checked the bell schedule there, and students have 4 minutes to go from one part of the building to another. So if we expect students to walk more than 300 feet in 4 minutes, then we can do it ourselves as well.
Are we ready to, I only have one other condition that I'd like us to consider. And that
We're
was,
done with the parking. I just want to make sure anybody else
Yeah.
have anything to add.
the sidewalk that would connect down Lorraine on the west side of the road. That would connect, right now there's a sidewalk that curves around on Titus and starts heading south on Lorraine Drive. Eventually, that area is going to be developed into something. I think it would be prudent at this moment, especially considering that 93 is now underneath the control of I-Square, that we consider extending that sidewalk.
So I just want clarification. Is 93 part of this application?
No.
No.
So how can we do that? I agree, I don't have a problem with what you're saying. I'm
No,
just-
I think that,
How can that be a condition for this?
I'm not saying that we put it in front of 93 at this moment. I can imagine that we can put it in front of the parking lot, as well as walk it down toward, I believe on that side is 51.
Which we're not,
So
51 part of this application?
Yes.
Okay. 51 is?
And I'm not going to spend a lot of energy on this.
So you're asking for a parking lot in front of 51 and...
A sidewalk.
Sorry, sidewalk in front of the parking lot and 51.
Right.
How does the board feel about that? I'll start on this side. Brad,
I support it.
Mary?
No.
Come back to me.
Okay. I'm a no. Alan?
I'm obviously, I made the motion.
I think I'm a no.
Mr. Evelyn?
Explain it to me again one more time.
That we would extend there's a current sidewalk at the corner of Lorraine and Titus that curves down Titus and heads south. It ends at number 93 at the moment. I'm asking that we pick it up at 81, 71, 61, 51. And with that in mind, we were made aware that the applicant now controls 93 or soon will, is under contract. That property will probably be coming for us. We would actually be getting an entire sidewalk on that side that would allow for walkability
To
obviously down to the stream bank, if you wanted to do that. It would allow walking over to the I-Square project, the current I-Square project. It would also allow folks to go across to the new development.
So can I just address the stream bank? I don't think that's gonna be open to the public, from what I heard. That's all gonna be private
I don't know
property.
what's stopping it.
Well, that's private.
It's private property, and so in the same way that anybody might have a stream corridor running through their backyard, typically people are not walking back there.
What about splitting the difference on that and only requiring the sidewalk on the north side? Because that would connect with Titus almost.
yeah, I could say 71, 81, or 61, 71, 81.
I'm good with that.
Is that fair?
Yep.
I would be inclined to say 71 and 81 stopped at the curb cut.
So what's the motion now?
Are you okay with that, Alan?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
My understanding is the curb cut exists where that number 58 would be on map C2.
Yep, right. So stop it at the just north of that, where you can see the two little horizontal lines on C2.
Yep, and then continue
Stop it at the north curb cut, and then run it from there up to 81, edge of 81, north edge of 81,
and then south.
and then south down
property on
745,
61.
which is where it is, right?
Yeah.
So sidewalk from the curb cut at 61 north to the curb cut of 81? Is that what I heard? I wanna make sure I got this right.
Yes. Yes, that's all we can do at this moment.
Okay, so we're including 61.
Oh, I thought that was.
I was saying not to include 61, because if we're gonna put a fence up, you can't access it. Like, you can't walk out onto the parking lot, onto the sidewalk.
Well, that's assuming the applicant puts up a fence.
Right. Well, even if he has trees there, you can't. Right. If you put up evergreen trees, you can't either. So I don't know if we need it over 61, but I'm thinking from the northern curb cut on 71.
That's fine. Northern curb cut on 71, north to 81.
Yep, and then the entirety of 81 to the southern border of 93. We're okay referencing northern border of 81 I know we don't wanna reference the house numbers on parcels not. Okay, so to the northern border of 81.
Yeah, or reference the tax account number from the,
Oh, that's a different drawing.
You can actually reference the northern boundary on 81 Lorraine, which is in the boundary of the proposed site plan application. Anything beyond that is beyond the application.
Yep, so I'd say to the northern border of 81.
Okay, so who did I just wanna go back, who's in favor of that?
I'm in favor of that.
I am.
No? No, Mary's a no.
Do they have to come back to ask for this at another time?
Do they have to come back? Well, we're making it a condition that they have to do it. That's why I'm saying
He
no.
would install the fence, he would install the sidewalk.
But it's possible to ask for it at a different time.
No.
That's what I'm asking.
Not
If
unless
something
it's
in
direct.
I don't think
proximity
so, no.
comes up, right?
If he does something with 93, I suppose, I'll defer to you.
yeah, if you did something with 93, it could be a reasonable condition, but absent that, it might be difficult to tie it to site plan review and approval.
So if he did something in 93, if you were not in favor of sidewalk, then you change your mind, you could then do it. Did I say that correct? If he did something with 93, that would,
If the sidewalk is constructed or not constructed, in connection with this resolution.
let's say that it wasn't constructed and he did something in 93, then it could be brought back up again, or not?
Only if it required approval by this board.
Correct.
I mean,
And if it was rationally related to the approvals that he was
Right.
seeking.
another idea might be, I'm just throwing this out there to see if it's more palatable, is taking the curb out, because when you look at the aerial, you'll see that the curb is not immediately adjacent to the edge of Lorraine Drive. So it's going to create a kind of a strange area between the edge of the pavement and the curbing. What if the curbing went all the way to the edge of the pavement and the buffer was thicker?
I'm sorry, Bradley, can you explain that?
Instead of a
Understand
sidewalk.
what I'm saying? I'm not like in love with the idea, but I just wanted to see what other people thought about it,
I
which was
prefer that we start building sidewalks on the.
okay.
Okay, so it's a sidewalk, let's stick with the
Okay.
sidewalk.
Okay.
Okay, sidewalk's the sidewalk.
And then, just for Michelle's notes, in the context of this project and the site plan application that's in front of you, what's the rationale for this particular condition?
I believe that it would further the comprehensive plan and the master plan for this area and starting to facilitate a more walkable, pedestrian-friendly community. And it's going to allow eventually access to the old I Square as well as to the new part of the project. Is my rationale behind it.
Okay. So once again,
I'm gonna say no.
no? Okay. So
Good,
there isn't.
we can go on to the next thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
Bernie, I
having
just
said
have,
that, do
can
we
I-
have all the conditions now?
I just want to ask a question of staff. Okay. We are giving preliminary and final for the site plan as a whole, correct?
Correct,
For the cottage buildings,
correct.
for the,
The easier way of saying this is you're giving preliminary and final as conditioned in what's been previously stated for everything proposed minus building 5 and the adjacent parking lot
okay,
and building 6 and related amenities, AKA the bike rack.
And what's 5? 5 is
the multi-tenant apartment,
Building 5 is on Titus, fronts on Titus
sorry.
Avenue.
okay.
On the east side of Baker's Park.
And I guess my only question on that to the board and to you, Mr. Chairman, is we were not provided with any elevations for the two-story building that you mentioned earlier.
So condition that there
I think that should come back at least in front of us from an elevation standpoint. If we're not allowing the retail building and building 5 because we don't have elevations on them, I think that should also be one of the buildings that needs to come back.
You did say that they were gonna look like the cottages, but it's also
It's a
important to
two-story building,
understand that
though.
it's
Right. Yeah,
two-story and it's double the square footage.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying.
So,
So it would be, I'll just restate that, so it's gonna be preliminary and final on everything except for Building 5, the adjacent parking lot to the east, Building 6, and the proposed two-story common building. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Just helping Michelle with the note writing.
And are we giving preliminary on those, or are we? Yeah, okay.
Providing preliminary on the, on
On those
those
things
3
you listed.
items, yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
so I'm gonna reread the motion then, so.
And just before the chairman reads the motion, so the straw polls that he took are obviously not binding, so to the extent that you're not comfortable with the motion in its entirety, you can certainly vote nay. If you want to add a condition, something like that, you still have the ability to do that. Be sure you're comfortable with it one way or the other in its entirety.
So before I reread this, and it's okay to add later, as he said, any other motion or conditions that anybody's thought of? Okay. So Carrie, I do want, well, let me start this. So upon the matter, here's the motion. Upon the matter of request by I Square LLC for preliminary and final site plan approval and steep slope and watercourse environmental protection overlay EPOD district permits associated with the expansion of the I Square development located on premises 775 and 795 Titus Avenue, 50, 51, 60, 61, 71, 81, 93 Lorraine Drive in a mixed-use commercial district for preliminary and final approval, except for, can I do that here? Building 5, lot 21.
Hang on, we got a problem, sorry. Something just came up when you just read that. 93 is included in this?
That's what's on the sheet.
Yeah.
So 93 is listed.
But not shown on the plan for any improvement, and so for the sake of, the only thing I can, and I have to double check with an existing, let me pull up an existing, plan of the parcels. It's possible that a portion of the buffering area on the north side of the parking lot may be crossing into 93, and I'll double check that. So bear with me for a moment. Because of the dark line of the boundary of the
Yep, I understand
extent
what
of the
you're saying.
site plan, it's hard to know if the, let me pull, I'm gonna,
I think that's the property line.
Good thing I have an eraser.
Under the dark line, so I don't think there's any improvement shown on 93.
No, there isn't.
I just want to be clear.
It's part of the property line.
based on my review, it looks like 93 is outside of
The
the,
improvements.
of the improvements. So I think for clarity, we could strike that from the list of properties that are impacted by the site plan application.
So struck. Okay?
Okay, thank you,
All right.
sorry.
So I was at preliminary and final approval, except for Building 5, Lot 21, Building, help me with the building number,
Can you define that lot a little better? That's how many parking spaces are in it, I believe. The 21 with the circle around it?
I would just call it the,
21 space.
I would call it the north, I'm sorry, it's been a long, northwest corner of Baker's Park and Titus Avenue.
northwest corner of Baker Park and Titus Avenue.
And the portion of the lot that's shown to include 21 spaces is what the board discussed.
The common building and Building 6 are not included.
And
That's where I'm having a problem with that motion being made that way. 21, we're not allowing, it's now a new condition. It's not that we're exempting it from consideration.
Preliminary final, right? We're saying
We're-
that it can't.
Right.
Just going by what staff recommended, so. Should I say
Oh,
no?
so
I
I'm
think-
sorry, no, and certainly Deputy Town Attorney can jump in, but it sounded before like the condition was that the area previously shown as 21 parking spaces is now being, required to be green space
Yes.
by the planning board. And so that portion of parking on the proposed site plan is being eliminated from the site.
And Carrie, I think when you said earlier, when I asked the clarification on what was not included, you said, whatever that number is, Building 5 or whatever it is, kind of near where like Murph's is today, that area.
Correct.
I believe you said, and the parking lot to the east,
The ancillary parking lot's never been approved.
because we have not approved that to this time.
It was, you had given preliminary approval previously. That portion of the site was not given, it was given preliminary but not final, and so we
Right.
were just carrying that forward, so it's.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think if we're talking about what's exempted from the preliminary and final, we're talking about Building 5, 6, the two-story building, and the parking lot to the east of Building 5. Would that be accurate?
I think the preliminary, I think the building 6 is exempt, is not included, but the site was, for the site work.
Correct. Yes, for Building 6.
Correct. So the building itself could not be constructed currently because it hasn't achieved planning board's review and approval.
Are we okay? or-
So, yeah, so my recommendation is let's just recite what's getting preliminary and final, and then, Spencer, to your point, the things that are not included in the preliminary and final bucket, let's address each of those individually
Sure.
to state what the status is.
Okay.
Oh, that's a better way to do it affirmatively. then.
Yeah.
I am going to start over. Upon the matter of request by I Square LLC for preliminary and final site approval and steep slope and watercourse environmental protection overlay, EPOD, district permits associated with the expansion of the I Square development located on premises 775 and 795 Titus Avenue, 50, 51, 60, 61, 71, 81 Lorraine Drive in a mixed-use commercial district. And now do we do the exclusions?
No,
No?
Preliminary, so the motion is for preliminary and final site plan approval and a steep slope and watercourse environmental protection overlay district permit 4, and then let's fill in the 4.
you want to do the conditions first and then?
No, let's say what we're giving preliminary and final on.
So,
So all elements as presented, with the exception of, and then you guys fill in the blank.
All right.
Building 5
yep.
and the ancillary parking lot to the east.
Building 6. And the proposed two-story common building. That's it. That's what I had.
And then I'd suggest the board discuss the conditions for preliminary and final, and then we'll separately address the status of those 4 items that Spencer just called out and Alan just called out.
Building 5 and the ancillary parking lot have been a question and concern of this board.
Hold on, let's let
Let me do the
Bernie
conditions.
read the
Okay,
conditions.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
So the conditions are, 1, bike rack installed near the barn. I'm not gonna say or common building any longer, near the barn.
Sure.
That the fence that is above the
Yes,
creek needs to be at a height of 3 feet above the creek and requires DEC approval.
Bernie, I'm sorry, I have, addition of a permanently installed bike rack near the brewery or the common building.
We're striking or the common building.
We're
'cause
striking
So
or
you're
the
taking
common
out the
building.
common building. Okay, sorry, guys.
Okay.
No, that's
problem.
okay.
What do you have for the fence, so I don't have to say it again?
The fence, let me find it.
I have it needs to be 3 feet above the creek.
The installation of fence only permitted by DEC, installed 3 feet above the high water line.
High water.
Perfect. Mm-hmm.
Fence across the creek from crest of stream bank to crest of stream bank, permitted by DEC and 3 feet above the high water mark.
Ingress and egress on Strathallen and Baker. Did I say it correct that time?
Restricted, I have it restricted.
Restricted on Lorraine.
Ingress and egress restricted use to Stranahan and Baker's Park. No?
Ingress and egress shall be limited to Baker's Park and Stranahan,
Yeah.
Yes.
Period.
period.
Two. Okay.
And it blocked curb cuts on Lorraine. Correct?
Blocked.
The brewery hours of operations would be no later than 10 p.m. Harp-style lamps on Titus Avenue, similar to the other lamps on Titus Avenue. Screening of the Lorraine Drive parking lot on the, that would be east facing
East facing.
side, to include more robust plantings, slash evergreens and or a fence.
The appropriateness of which shall be determined by the Office of Planning and Zoning.
The, and I apologize, I had something written about the subsequent of what's before us, before the board. Was that in regards to those plantings? Can't recall.
Not sure.
Lorraine until subsequent application comes before the board.
That related to the access.
To the access?
Yeah. we don't
Okay.
need that.
We gotta get to the parking lot. So, hold on. Eliminate the parking lot at the, I wrote it at the corner of Titus and Baker Park for green space. And then I have a finding that the residential cottages would be for 55-year-old and above residents. Got it? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Need a second?
Need a
Need a
second.
Oh, I need a second, sorry.
I'll second it.
Oh,
Oh, you want it?
no, no.
Red can second it.
Forgot about that.
I'm gonna say aye.
So I'd call the
Call the
matter
roll
to a vote again.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, at this point, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn so we can begin the next meeting. All those in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
please?
Second. Then second.
All those in
Thank
favor,
everybody.
please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?